The year is age 737. Frieza and his minions circle over planet Vegeta. Frieza lifts a finger, getting ready to destroy it when a pod races past him. Fortunately, the tyrant didn't see the Saiyan survivor, but the 32-year-old... The 32-year-old Walter White wanted the attention all too well. Flying past Frieza, he lifted his middle finger in what he thought was some glorious display of defiance. Walt's escape pod races towards Earth, and eventually lands in a strange new place called New Mexico. This is where our story begins.
I've seen a lot of crazy what-if scenarios over the years by lots of great YouTubers. Some crazy stuff like, what if Frieza turned good, or what if so-and-so was sent to Earth instead of Goku, like Vegeta or Broly. And considering the variety of all of these scenarios, I was surprised to find nobody made anything covering possibility of Walter White being sent to Earth instead of Goku. So that's what today's video is going to focus on. Now, our story begins in the year that Goku was sent to Earth. Walter White has just arrived in Albuquerque, New Mexico, a strange new place, an alien world. Now, there's not much to be found in New Mexico in terms of regular Dragon Ball antics or setups for plots, so this what-if might be a little difficult to pull off, but you have to remember, Walter White is a character that attracts bad situations. He is an egomaniac, so anything good that he comes into is going to be screwed by him. And that's where we get the setup for our first arc, Walter White and the Pilaf gang. Now we're going to do a little bit of a fast forward here. Walt has had some time to get established in Albuquerque, and he's met all of the resident Breaking Bad characters, settled down with Skyler. At some point they're going to have Walt Jr., Marie, and Hank are around, and this is where our story really starts, because they're just sitting at home one day when Skyler gets a call from her old friend Bulma, talking and going on about Dragon Balls. And this takes place around the same time Dragon Ball begins, where Bulma originally finds Goku. An eager scientist, Walt was excited to learn more about these magical MacGuffins. So he and Skyler decided to take a trip down to West City and give a visit to Bulma. When they arrive, Bulma is sitting down with a kindly old man holding an orange orb with 4 stars on them. His name is Gohan. Goku never killed Gohan in this timeline in his Uzaru form. So when Bulma originally meets Goku, when she's originally supposed to, she ends up meeting this kind old man. And that's how she gets the technology for the Dragon Radar. Things still happen in the original event, except, instead of her and Goku going on adventures, it ends up being her and Walter White. Now, in this timeline of events, I have, for some reason, decided to make it so that Bulma is Skyler's niece or something, because I can't really think of any other way for them to naturally meet and bridge these two worlds. So, after explaining what the Dragon Balls are to Walt and Skyler, Bulma and them decide to embark on an amazing journey to go and find the Dragon Balls. In this version of the story, Bulma's motivation is a little bit less selfish, as she wants to genuinely help her family out, as they are already struggling with their financial situation. So, instead of turning to meth or 2 jobs or laser tag, they decide to go after the Dragon Balls. Now from here, things play out mostly as they do in the original story, with Oolong and Yamcha eventually finding these characters and tagging along with them. And then they encounter the Pilaf gang, who promptly tortures them and locks them up, only to be executed days later. And while they're in this room, Everybody is kind of pissed because they thought they were about to get their wish, and Walter White is just walking around the room examining its flaws. Walt has not had the training with Master Roshi, so he can't really use anything like a Kamehameha to get out there, but he is a Saiyan from Planet Vegeta, so he might be able to use a Gallatin, but he's too obsessed with the poor workmanship of the room. Like, what is this schlock? This is he's an arrogant guy. He's an arrogant guy, so he doesn't really, he's just pointing out the room's flaws, and then he gets mad, and he looks up at the window, and then he thinks to himself, oh right, I can turn into a giant monkey, so
I am the one who stomps.
Walt smashes his way through the base, everybody else running away in fear. But unlike the original timeline, the Pilaf gang actually gained access to the Dragon Balls and used it to wish a trap, trapping the giant monkey, while everybody else runs away, abandoning him. Nothing they can do to save Walt. Things take a turn for the worst in this What If, as Walt awakens, completely butt naked with the tall figure of Mai looming over him. The Pilaf gang interrogate him, wondering what they can do with him, when they find out that he knows a lot about chemistry, and they use his background as a chemist and a Saiyan. With Walt now under the control, it will be easier for the Pilaf gang to finally take over the world. Everyone else makes their way back to West City, lamenting the loss of their family and friend, and wondering if there's anything they can do to save him. His whereabouts are unknown. For all they know, he might be dead. But perhaps the most tragic thing is that Skylar was actually pregnant with their son, who would be named Walt Jr. in honor of his late father. As the years went on, Hank stepped up to be a father figure for the young boy. Meanwhile, his real biological father was making meth for the Pilaf gang to spread their influence and take over the world. Yes, in this timeline, Walt was forced to cook meth, and the Pilaf gang taught him how to do it. Of course, Walt has mixed feeling about this. He did enjoy being appreciated again, and his Saiyan instinct made him enjoyable to conquering, but he had given up that life already, and he didn't really know how to feel about this. Years went by, and he resented it more and more. Although the activity was nice, he didn't like being enslaved. But on one fateful day, one of their conquerors, the Red Ribbon Army, ended up attacking the Pilaf gang's base of operations as a turf war was going on. And during this attack, they ended up capturing Walter White, who they recognized as the only real competent member of the Pilaf gang. They promised that they would return Walt to his family if they served him for a while. Walt, not really knowing what to expect, decided to join them because he really didn't have any other option. Meanwhile, Krillin and Tien were being trained by Master Roshi, as the Dragon Ball universe will go on as normal, and Tien's redemption and Krillin's training arc, maybe even Yamcha, they're all destined to become Roshi's students and go on to become heroes. And being old friends of Skylar through their adventures and collecting Dragon Balls, they decide one day to go on a rescue mission at the request of Skylar White, who suspects that Walt may still be out there after finding his signature fedora at one of the areas in West City. It might be crazy, but she just strongly believes that he might still be out there. Maybe when that building was destroyed that formerly belonged to the Pilaf gang. Maybe there's a clue. After doing some investigation, Krillin, Yamcha, and Tien ultimately conclude that it's possible he may be held at the Red Ribbon base, and they make their way there. Angered at the betrayal and loss of one of their greatest allies, Emperor Pilaf unleashes King Piccolo, an ace up his sleeve. He's known about the demon for years in this timeline, and only now decides to use him to exact revenge and reclaim his place. King Piccolo, however, had been sitting in the same room that they kept all of Walter White's crystal blue meth in, and he was very high from it. Enraged and high, he goes on a rampage and destroys all left of West City, leaving it in ashes. No one could stop the Demon King. He was too powerful, and there was no reasoning with him, as he was high as a kite from Walter White's meth, and he wanted to know who could create such a thing, such a perfect recipe for destruction. Just as Krillin and the gang were about to find Walt and release him, they see explosions coming around and see this rampaging titan destroying the city. King Piccolo grows to the full size we all know that he can, and he is a menace, much more akin to the pure chaos of Majin Buu, Kid Buu. There's no reasoning with him, like I said earlier. Sensing the immense energy and seeing the intense threat, Krillin, Tien, Yamcha, and Chiaotzu head over to stop the Demon King and save as many people as they possibly can. Fortunately enough, this also happened to be the day that Walt was planning his escape. He was cooking what appeared to be meth for the Red Ribbon Army, but really, it was the small explosives taking the form of his signature crystals, and he was now ready to use it. When he looked out the window and saw this rampaging giant, a straight beam hits the cell room that Walt was kept captive in, and he jumps out, flying over to the threat.
What are you going to do, Tiny Saiyan? You can't do anything to stop me. And you're going to come over here and bring me even more meth to fuel my rampage? Try to fight me if you can.
But Walt stands his ground. You got one part of that wrong. This is not meth. Walt flies up into the sky, releasing a huge energy beam, piercing the entirety of King Piccolo's body and destroying him in one shot with a shiny blue effect over the white plasma. But as King Piccolo bursts into nothing and everything all at once, he leaves behind one last thing after his rampage. A small little egg that goes flying into the air. All the way across the world, it orbits the Earth, landing back where Skylar lives, patiently waiting for her husband's return. Somewhere in the desert of Albuquerque, New Mexico, Walt, after defeating King Piccolo, descends into the ground. A smile appears on his face as he sees his friends. He's so happy to finally be free. Walt would introduce himself to Krillin, seeing potential in the young boy, but not as a meth cook, of course, just as a warrior. And Walt's, a decent person in this timeline, so he figured he'd get to meet him. He might be important later. Walt would go home and see the little boy waiting for his father to return and finally meet him. The 4 or 5-year-old little Walt Jr. walks up to him and gives his daddy a hug. And Walt, Skylar, Hank, and Marie can finally live their life now that Walt is not being held captive anymore. He is finally a free man. Sometime later, however, Walt would receive a letter from this guy named Kami, who recognizes his potential as a warrior and has invited him to his lookout to train him and help him fully realize his potential. Perhaps not only as a warrior, but as a scientist. Maybe Mr. Popo has a few things to teach Walt in this story. And so, everything has a happy ending for part 1 of this story. I was gonna come up with some crazy cliffhanger to leave y'all on, but I can't really think of anything. So, if you have any ideas for the direction where this story should go, please leave them in the comments. I'm open to any constructive criticism, as this is my first video where I'm really using my voice, and it's the longest video I've ever made. So, I hope you have a wonderful holiday and you're able to spend it with the ones you love. Take good care of yourself, drink plenty of water, brush your teeth, all that good stuff. And I will see you in 100 years when I upload again. Have a wonderful day.